done being tested for the moment, knock on wood. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at 11:09. First of all, in terms of roll call, if we could let the record reflect that 5 of the members of the committee, a quorum, are here. Missing are Ryan Schwamberger and Dale Slaughter. The first thing I'd like to do is get an approval of the minutes for the meeting held on October 28th, 2019. These are in your packet. So I don't know if everybody needs just a minute to look at those, or if somebody's ready to make a motion and a second to approve the minutes for October 28th.
A motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes included in your packet from October 28th, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anybody disagree? Okay, motion is passed. The minutes from October 28th are approved. I don't believe that we have any official correspondence that were received for today, so we will go ahead to old business. First thing on old business, and I know a lot's been done here, so I appreciate all the work that folks have done, but actually, before I get into that, I'm going to shift one thing on the agenda, and actually going to take committee member comments first, and ask Steve to go ahead and give an update on convention center bookings and revenue and any other reporting that he has available for us. So Steve, if you could kick us off, that'd be great.
Just a real quick rundown. Not a lot has changed since last time because it's kind of a slow month. We have 13 weddings booked for 2020. That's up a little bit from what we had last year this time because if you remember, the rates went up for a brief time, so kind of business fell off for a little bit. Last year we had about 10 weddings pre-booked at this time.
What months are they primarily in?
September and October are the biggest months. It's kind of odd.
Oh.
September's got, I think, 6. It's yeah.
Experience.
And then in 2018, just for perspective, we had 22 booked at this time, so we're still not back up to where it used to be, but it is better than last year.
Okay.
Right now, the convention center revenue, we've had a couple events added since last time I talked to you for 2019. We're at 91,475.
Compared to
Last year was 86,040, so we're definitely up on that.
Could you just give me that number again?
Sure, I'm sorry.
Just the
I shot
86,000.
out of a cannon. I rattled everything off. Yeah, the revenue this year is so far 91,475.
Okay.
And in 2018, for comparison, it was $86,040.
But the rates went up, so is the number down?
That's a good question. I mean, they went up very slightly, so I could analyze that, but the number of events is up from last year. Yeah. Okay. I know
So
that for
if
sure.
you could just the last 3 digits of
Yeah,
the
sure. I'm
20
sorry. $86,040.
Oh, 40. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
You speak fine, I write slowly. So.
I usually am told I speak too loudly because I'm an actor. So when I'm in front of a microphone, I try to tone it down so I don't blow your eardrums out. And you asked me this before last meeting. Right now for 2020, we don't have all the contracts back, but the people that have committed to come back, that figure is 69,625 so far.
Have the Greyhounds committed? Or?
Yes, they want to come back, absolutely. There's an antique show that dropped off last year because of the kerfuffle with the raising rates. He got upset. He didn't come back, but he's handed it off to another woman. So hopefully she's going to come back in 2020 with 2 shows. And that would be like there's called the Delaware Coast Antique Show. It was a really popular antique show here for a while. And they didn't come back last year. The guy's kind of retiring. The woman who he's handed it off to wants to come back for 2 shows in 2020. And that would be like $7,000 per show. So that would be a huge boost. So it's looking good.
Now, I heard you booked Taylor Swift for the summer. Is that true, or is that a
No
rumor?
comment.
Okay. That is not true for the record. I did not hear that. I'm just kidding. So
Yeah, I mean, there's this
There are
this
some
one
good
group
events
from
booked.
Ocean City that books pretty
Yeah.
fairly well-known people. He's got Peter Herman coming in December. He's going to try to book something again in February. He does something every Valentine's Day. So
good.
Hey, you said you booked 3 new events for this year, so in the year, for the year. What kinds of events were those? I'm curious to what was booked. like 6 weeks out?
One was just a private party. One was a meeting with the Delaware Division of Revenue, a small meeting.
Yeah.
So I think those are the only two that come to mind right now.
Like a conference room booking or?
Yeah, just a small meeting.
And the party was a holiday party or?
It's a family reunion that
Oh,
they come together
okay.
every year in December. They're like musicians. It's a family reunion, but they also play music, so it's kind of fun.
Oh, that's really
Okay.
cool. Just Steve, while you're up there, a couple things I was going to ask the group if they agree, the committee if they agree. One, I'd like to present some sort of proposal for chairs as part of the budget process, and I teed it up and asked Sharon if she could include it in, the budget so the commissioners could discuss and, and see if that's something we all agree we want to move forward with. Kyle and Richard, in some of their research, have come across some good options. I don't know if you guys have already started that internally. So I was going to ask as a follow-up to this meeting if Kyle, Richard, if you want to be involved, whoever gets with you, and Chuck and Sharon, whoever the right people are.
Yeah, I mean, it would be Chuck for
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Because one of the
Yeah.
huge variables in what kind of chairs you pick is how they're going to be stored.
Storage,
There's
yeah.
very little storage. Right now, they're the folding chairs that hang on these little racks.
Yeah.
You know,
That's a
more
lot of
comfortable chairs are
vertical
probably not
space.
as foldable, I guess. Like these are
Yeah.
really nice, comfortable chairs, but I don't know
Yeah.
how you store them, you know?
Yeah.
That's kind of some of the questions I had when I
Yep.
was delving into it, is trying to figure out where they were stored, because I know that was an issue. Also, there's comfort and there's a few different, there's the footprint, so you can only pick certain things from each one. So I gathered a couple of different ones, but they're a different style of chair, but I don't know on the storage aspect if that is going to be
Yeah,
able to be used or not.
Chuck
too, so.
Snyder would be the absolute person who you have to discuss that with.
So,
Maybe we'll set up an
Yeah.
internal chair meeting through Sharon with
Chair testing meeting.
Stephen and Chuck, but book it through
Yeah.
Sharon.
I don't know that I have to be there necessarily. I mean, because
well, it'd be good to get, I mean, you hear that feedback, right?
Wouldn't mind, sure,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so that'd be great. So that's one, and then the second one, and again, maybe we'll go through Sharon, and I think we should go through Sharon, but I think you actually should be at this one, if you don't mind. Would like to get an idea, what would you call it? You explain it, you explain better on the financials.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out the actual term for it. It's not a feasibility study
Nah.
per se. It's
I think it's a pro forma.
yeah. Okay. Is that would be the term you'd be for
It's
it?
a projection of potential revenue. If you do X, what will it
Yeah.
result in?
Essentially a return on your investment in the actual convention hall area, and what could be done to make things better, but also increase the revenue overall, and also for the town. I think that's a big thing. I found a study that I was looking at actually from 2017 that's been pretty great. From looking on the internet from it's basically their feasibility study of expanding the convention center. And it's
City.
Ocean City Convention Center, sorry. And it's a 150-page report, and it's, they paid an outside, I think it's Crossroads Consultants, to do an outside study of it, and it's just a wealth of information, and talks about essentially how, overall too, how adding a little bit more is creating so much more revenue in the actual town itself too. So it makes it a more integral part of the town, the actual convention center.
So it's like a cost-benefit analysis.
Yeah, and it goes into trends and all kinds of stuff for that as well. And I think it would be, from that, we can deduce a little bit of, obviously, we're not Ocean City, we're a little smaller, significantly, but there's still those trends. I think that's close enough, and it's, 2017, it's not that far back that we can really utilize some of that data to create something like that of our own and see where we can put money in and get more money
Was a
out.
study made. You had a copy of it, you have a copy of it. I think you should look at that.
Okay.
And what we need is a business plan.
Was that recently, or was that?
2 years?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I was not given it.
I don't remember that.
Well, you had shared it with
You
me.
gave it to him.
I
Yeah,
did,
and I gave it
goodness.
back.
to me?
Yeah.
Dang.
But it was,
All
I love
right.
the numbers. I always look at
no,
the
no,
numbers.
but it
I'll
was,
try to
It
find
has
it.
all those numbers you're talking about
Okay.
in it.
Goodness gracious. Okay, well then, all right, I'll take an action to do that.
it's a hard, but it was actually done before this building was built. I mean,
got
it was from the prior convention center.
All right, we'll see if we can track that baby down as part of this, but
Why is it?
So anyway, I'd like to set that up. And Carol, I'd love to have your participation because I think one of the things we'd like to be able to show is not just the convention center and the revenue it creates per booking, but the broader revenue that's created for the town because of events at the convention center. So if we could have, if you don't mind, if yourself or Emily or whoever is appropriate from the chamber participate in that. I think that would be beneficial. Thank you. That's what I figured. I know, so no use
That's
starting
probably
from
the best place where the data currently exists.
probably. Yeah, they keep great data, particularly on the hotels and such, so.
I did want to mention a thing too. I guess this would be kind of around this time. I just kind of broke down what you did with your chart of all the dates and everything that was booked, and I thought it was pretty interesting that even though nonprofits are charged at a different rate, they essentially almost come up to the same amount of revenue brought in just because of the fact that they're more likely to book more days, and they're also more likely to book more of the actual area and utilize more of the area.
Yeah.
So they accounted for the actual events makeup, they account for 19%, but for the profit brought in, so for-profit events account for 19%, and for the events that they are, and they make up 23% of the profit. So even though the event rate is higher for nonprofit or for-profits, nonprofits are utilizing the space more and spending more money in the actual facility.
Giving us more profit.
Yes, more, yeah.
Oh, fascinating.
And just to give Kyle,
Yeah.
he does beautiful graphs.
know,
He
he's
created this
awesome.
diagram. So
love
at
it.
some point when we're doing a presentation, you'll get the benefit of some
Great.
But again, just for clarification and not to be too goofy about it, but we're really talking about revenue because we don't know what the cost is. So we don't know what the profit would be.
True.
Right.
Correct, sorry.
gross revenue.
Right.
Okay, well, I think you could also, I think, data people and people who run the budget here could tell me better, but it seems you could make some assumptions based on the Ocean City study, based on how much, electricity we use in there, if we can even do it. I don't know if it's on a different system
Yeah, there's
or
definitely a way
whatever.
to.
Yeah,
There's a few different ways you can kind of figure that out. Obviously, you're not going to know your exact costs for everything
Right.
up front,
A
but
note on that part of the building.
well, that's a good point too. Yeah.
Square foot.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
There are a myriad of software programs for convention halls, convention centers, and all the information you feed into it and it prints all that
does the
out.
heavy lifting for you.
As long as you put the right information.
Well, that's the thing. It's a garbage in,
garbage in,
garbage. I
right.
know. Boy. Okay. Very good discussion. So, one thing I know the holidays are pretty busy and everybody's running around, but the budget discussions for the commissioners kick off at the January workshop meeting, and I don't have my calendar in front of me, but it'd probably be that Monday after the holidays. So the first is on a Wednesday, so it'd probably be the second, third, fourth, fifth, maybe like January 6th, I think would be the workshop. If I'm correct, that's a Monday.
Yes.
So what I was going to ask you guys is if we could have kind of a, wherever you are in all our studies and some of this financial data and recommendations, if we could get on the agenda for January 6th, particularly. I know we'll still be working on kind of the long-term strategy, but focus on kind of the background of what you've done so far, present some of the data, and then back up a couple of the recommendations that we might have. Would that be possible to pull whatever you have together? I wouldn't expect the whole long-term strategy to be done, but at least enough of a briefing that can justify whatever,
We could do an executive summary.
investments. Yeah, to justify any investments we'd like to see. You won't be here?
Not
Okay.
on that Monday.
Okay,
Is it-
well,
is
we
the
can
Monday-
find a
I'll-
time. We can do it on the
Following Monday. I will be.
following, or the
Depending
following
on when your
Friday,
budget's
so,
If you need me on that specific day, I would gotta be out actually also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so maybe we could do the regular meeting then,
The 11th, I won't be.
the 11th. So maybe we could do the, so say that's the 6th, so 13th, the 16th, I think would be the workshop. I'd rather much test my memory, actually. Yeah, it's the 6th,
16th is
January.
a Thursday,
Okay, it's the 17th then.
Friday.
Would you guys both be in town
I
then?
could do that, yeah.
Okay, so I'll request us to be on the agenda on the January 17th. And then you can kind of and you can give
Yeah,
kind of just at least your in-progress briefing and,
we could have thought
Yeah,
process on what's
Definitely
needed.
a lot of stuff to go over, but I think we can get a
Yeah. great.
general direction to start with for sure.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. All right, I think that's everything. We'll probably have 15 questions the minute you walk out the door, Stephen, but thank you for your information. We have a couple follow-ups, so thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and actually move into Agenda Item 5, Old Business, the update on the Convention Center and future initiatives. So you got, it's up to you guys again. Yep.
So there were two areas that we were going to kind of work on in parallel. One was booking guidelines, and the other was a meeting with the hotel community. And when I left the meeting the last time, Peter was kind enough to forward on a proposed set of booking guidelines that he had worked on a couple of years ago for this facility, but they never got approved or got anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Kyle has done a little bit of research for me because I've been out of the country a bit, and has already pulled down booking guidelines from both Orlando Convention Center and Albuquerque Convention Center. So not that it's apples and apples, but at least gives us kind of the headlines of things that we need to have information on our hall around. Things like scheduling priorities. You know, when Stephen gets a request, you know, can he book it right away, even if it's small in one room? Or is that blocking out a bigger event? That kind of thing. Things like, and that would fall under something called like event booking criteria. And then things like deposits and, you know, rental period and rules and regulations and all of that, that hopefully will make Stephen's job a lot easier if it is in black and white. So I think our proposal is, and Kyle and I haven't had a chance to go through what was originally done, is kind of give that a look, see if it's still all current. Maybe, have you ever seen that document from was it 2 years ago, Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years ago. And get some feedback on it. So rather than recreating and starting from the beginning, I'd rather start with a foundation, then see what's missing and what's not missing and get some feedback on it and hopefully build upon that and see if we can't get the city staff behind that kind of initiative to approve.
There was a lot of concern with it, and that's when we were basically told, stick to rates, not get involved in the tourism. But the priority is based on tourism impact, that you hold space for a show that's going to generate rooms, restaurants, rather than give it to a local. And there was no interest in pursuing that.
Because of that kind of priority basis?
Because we have not made a decision.
Right.
Are we a community center?
That's gonna
a
lead in well to our
convention
meeting.
center,
I don't think that's true. That's,
or,
wait.
let me finish, or
Okay.
all three?
I think we've made that decision.
All three.
We're all three.
Okay.
It's, I think, I will go on record right now unless there's something else, but as saying that we really are all, well, I think from our discussions, we are a convention center that focuses on community events. That's what we are.
That's, I think that's a fair summary.
So I think that decision has been made. I think the
And we're a
commissioners agree.
community center.
Oh, we're a convention center because we do welcome conventions at a certain level, but we also have a focus on the community. So it's both.
So the current thinking probably wouldn't be to give priority to a larger group that takes bedrooms over a community group. Treat everyone equally, it sounds like.
Well, and I think that's how we got in part to a focus on having booking, a renewed focus on the booking guidelines, if I'm not mistaken, because we found we really couldn't do the hourly rates until we had these guidelines.
That's correct.
So even though, a stated part of our charter is to put in place rates, it really can't be done in isolation of having a policy,
Oh, yeah,
so.
and I think to a certain degree, we're challenged by our own success, which in part is, where Stephen is acting is the catalyst for that, by not necessarily marketing or advertising, but, he's looked out, to try to encourage people to come, gets feedback from Carol and her team at the chamber. And so, the fact that we are already demonstrating that we can get increased bookings from year to year is a positive thing. Now it's just, how do we find ways to make sense out of all of it? So it's not just random.
Exactly.
Great.
Okay, super. And I think as part of maybe just to sort of to Peter's point is to get the, when you're developing your briefing, maybe it's one of the first things that we do is clarify that this is what, our feedback, this is what we are. It's a
I
convention
think it's going to
center
be pretty
with a.
important because it's going to change the
I
way the
agree.
booking policies are completely too, because
Totally.
you're heading in a specific direction
That's right.
depending on where you're going. So
Yeah, exactly. So, okay.
And I think, none of these things is done in a vacuum or in a silo. So it all is all complementary to the second thing that you're going to discuss, which is meeting with representatives of the hotels and Carol and her team as, what are the possibilities for other types of business.
coming in. Yeah.
Events for the convention center. And so I think what we're doing now is kind of like building from the foundation up rather than, from the top down. And I think the approach is key, and we've discovered that, it kind of has to build into whatever it's going to be rather than to already make a determination of what it's going to be, and then try to find the business to support whatever decision that we've made.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Were you still giving us an update on your?
Yeah, so can I do the second
Sorry,
part?
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
So the second part is thanks to Carol and the Chamber. She assembled a great group of hotel leaders for us just this past Monday. We met at the Belmore, and I was, being an ex-hotelie, really impressed that the general managers of the largest hotels were in attendance, including the Sands, the Breakers, the Admiral, the Boardwalk Plaza, Brighton Suites. And then on the smaller side, we had the brand new owners of Canal Side Inn, a husband-wife couple that just bought the Canal Side Inn. And then we also had the Fairfield Inn, that ownership group that's building the Residence Inn out on the highway, too. And others. Who am I missing, Carol? And others. Oh, the American Inn, right. General manager. Brighton Suites, yep, general manager. So it was really great. It was great to see that level of interest. And, basically Kyle and I, Carol introduced us, and Kyle and I went in saying, we just want to be a set of ears in finding out what your experience has been, if any, with trying to book space here at the convention center, what you would like a desired state to be, kind of a future state. We kind of said that things are on the table, short-term, long-term, what if we were going to either renovate or build some more space. And we basically talked about our desire for the two entities to work closer together, the hotel community and the convention center. So I would say it started off slow but gained traction, and I think they were happy to have some feedback to this group, to the city commission, because they really felt that the city hasn't been as warm and welcoming and a set of ears as they could have been. Am I saying that right, Carol? So, I mean, they first had to get over the fact that Kyle and I couldn't flip switches and make changes because we're not city employees, we're volunteers on a committee, so we kind of explained that. And then we asked for some specific examples, both positive and negative, in working with the building. And, I guess the one that was disturbing to me was the one that the general manager of the Sands talked about, where he had a large group using 90 rooms on peak night that needed space here at the center. And they couldn't get a response to a phone call on an inquiry for a site visit here. And it was a little bit discouraging. I think that might have been before the present situation happened, or
We both kind of looked at each other. That was one of the biggest things that stuck with me, is that I think they said it was multiple times too as well. It was
Right.
3 separate times they contacted and couldn't get a return call or email or anything.
I just want to be clear, I think that's I'm not, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not making an excuse or anything, I just,
Before the previous.
before like Stephen was put his point.
absolutely.
I don't mean to make it about names, but
Right.
I think there wasn't really a point before then. I just wanted to clarify that on
yeah.
behalf of the city and
Sure.
the fact that I think a change was made. However, that's their impression now. And I think it's a bigger issue because, you know, just the current employee that we have right now working and answering calls and all that, this is one of 4 jobs that that
Absolutely, yeah.
individual
At least
has. I think that's the bigger
And I'm going to
issue.
get to
So
that too,
I
yeah.
just wanted to lead into that
I don't
a
think it
little
should be
bit.
any,
Yeah.
it should not be any of his, how he's working. He's doing,
Right.
you know, he's a man of many hats. So it's not any, to discredit him at all.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify that, so.
Yeah,
And again, not to minimize that feedback because it's really critical to the bigger picture, really, really critical.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think we had another specific example where a client came over to get a tour of the building, and Stephen was just ready to go to lunch, and I do have to use the name because they quoted the name.
Okay.
And he said he wasn't going to be here and come back at 1:30 or wait for me to come back at 1:30. And obviously, in his current role, that's appropriate. But if we're going to have a sales outreach of this facility, the model really doesn't work. And of course, kind of an aha moment for Kyle and I was that we used to have a proactive sales approach here to this building, part-time as it were, but a woman named Karen Zakarian, who also worked for the Boardwalk Plaza, used to split her time and do shared time booking here and at the Boardwalk Plaza. And she came to the meeting late, and even before she came to the meeting, her name was brought up by several of the hotels saying it was much better when Karen had the role because we could work with her proactively.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. That her name came up a few times in the meeting, and then she was actually able to be there, and we got to speak with her for a little bit. But yeah, that seemed to be an issue. Is one of the biggest issues was with the availability to contact somebody and speak with somebody one-on-one, whether it be during an event or trying to book an event. So even during an event was a really big issue, I believe, because if there was something that needed to be done during an event and somebody needed to ask a question, there wasn't necessarily always somebody around or nearby. I think Carol's had an experience with that also as well.
You need a go-to person on site.
Yeah, so much like a normal convention center or a traditional convention center or traditional hotel meeting space, every group is assigned a convention coordinator or conference coordinator or convention service coordinator. So they do have that person's total information. So even if it's after 5 and they have a question about marking their floor for their exhibits, there's someone always accessible. So we don't have that. So they talked about response time. They talked about the booking process being too onerous and long. The hotel said that they haven't been able to secure booking lists. So one of the benefits that they see about being part of the chamber is that they should be able to solicit these groups for potential rooms, right? And call on them and say, hey, do you have overnights coming in concert with your event? We'd like to put together a special offer for your attendees.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
That was one thing that actually they mentioned there too, is I forgot what her name was, but she essentially mentioned basically being a liaison for the sales to actually sell the convention center because they want to sell the convention center because they want to fill it so that they can book rooms. And they already have sales teams already currently there. So it's,
Which organization? I'm sorry.
right, Fairfield, yes. But yes, essentially they already have sales teams and they were interested in filling their rooms, so they wanted to be able to sell the convention center. So that's why they wanted more information on things like when it's already currently booked and how to book it. That way they could essentially be the salesperson for the convention center. And they're already trained in sales. I thought it was a pretty interesting concept as well. It wouldn't cost anything extra to the city, which was a really interesting aspect as well.
Very, very interesting.
One thing about that is we would get every month a list of what was in the hall.
Uh-huh.
And that went to the hotels, it went to the chamber. Everybody knew.
When did it stop, Carol?
Well, I know the former city manager was all through that realm. I think it stopped when we switched city manager.
Really?
I really don't know the reason behind that. There could be laws changing and that type of thing. But we were all helped, if you're doing an event, and it helped the sales teams on the hotels reach out to groups too.
Well, and other businesses could build special packages around, not just the hotels, but,
Master calendar.
yeah.
Yes.
A
I know, it'd be
master
great
calendar.
if an event calls up a hotel space and just asks if there is an available date. And if that hotel can right off the bat say, yes, there's nothing on the calendar currently, I'll reach out and see if there is. And then instead of the back and forth game, I feel like the more back and forth you get, the more possibility you get a chance of losing that client and just losing them altogether. Especially when all these people in these hotels are already trained in the sales aspects. That's their director of sales and things of that nature. So I think it's like they're literally pushing the sale outside. I think it could be something that we could utilize greatly.
So what did I miss? You've got some good notes there.
Some of the other things, that I took notes here were just,
Infrastructure.
yeah, basically, there were some not parking situations, loading zone situations with the, yeah, exactly. With Carol's pointed this out previously with kind of loading in and out and where to park, some little information that goes with vendor guidelines. I've compiled 3 different vendor guidelines too. I think we should send out something of that nature to anybody that's being a vendor at an event, just so that it doesn't, any questions are answered there. A few other things that I feel like were mentioned a few times were better technology in the room. We're getting into a point where technology is expanding excessively, and you cannot kind of do a convention without technology often. One hotel had mentioned that they would have 25 to 30 rent 25 to 30 conference rooms a year if they could have kind of an executive type board meeting thing, but they wanted to be able to be mic'd up and as well as have like the actual
seamless AV presentation.
Yeah, exactly. They want to have a seamless presentation.
And these were the new owners actually at Canal Side Inn. So very interesting. The new owner of the Canal Side Inn is actually a leadership trainer. He's a PhD in organizational development. And they bought the Canal Side Inn to bring high-level business meetings, strategy meetings, board meetings into that hotel. And they're the ones that said they could probably book 20 to 30 dates a year if the facility matched the needs of their executive level clients.
They did also mention the visual aspect of it. They wanted it to appear more modern. That was mentioned a few times as well. It kind of
Aesthetic.
The aesthetic was a little antiquated and kind of could be as simple as a fresh coat of paint, honestly. But that was mentioned a few times. Also, there was mentioned about flexibility of booking kind of as well. I know that's kind of not as important probably for the convention hall as it is for the outdoor venues, but it could be a different kind of situation. But I know Carol's had situations where there's been rain events and things of that nature, and it's if your event's canceled, it's canceled. There's no sort of there's no backup. You can't get there's no where to put your event in a different room, or you don't get any of your money back. I know I looked at a few of the. It is the bandstand, yeah.
Got it, okay.
Outdoor venues.
Outdoor only is what it applies to. Gotcha, sorry.
I think, that was essentially, I think Richard went over most of it, though. I think one of the biggest issues was the actual booking process itself. I think it took too long. It was difficult to get an event booked and to get information, and the hotels kind of just wanted more information. So it was the information as overall and the availability to book an actual event.
And in summary, what this kind of points to is whether we want to have a proactive sales approach again, like we used to have, or whether we want an order taker approach. And that decision kind of has to be reached before we make all kinds of grand changes and plans, because otherwise you're not going to get the payoff if you have someone that's booking the events that this is one of 4 jobs and they don't have they don't have sales training.
What's the 2 options? You said a what?
Either
A booking man?
either a reactive approach,
Yeah.
which is what we have now, or a proactive
Okay.
sales, proactive hospitality sales approach.
We went through this a year and a half ago, and the result was instead of marketing brochure, a trifold. And that's why there's not enough information, because it's a
It
trifold.
all on one page. Yeah, I do think we are leaving some business on the table without being proactive on it. I think there's people that would be interested in booking, and I think it could benefit the convention hall as well as the town. I think that's a huge thing also.
Well, a
Increased
lot of the
revenue.
people who are booking it know the hall.
Yeah, so we're not getting new and
people, yeah.
incremental
Correct.
business.
And one of the difficulties there is if we would promote whatever we have to promote to groups who belong to the reading group, you heard me say, they're looking for places.
Yeah.
To have to get together. Military reunions, great family reunions, but we can't say, come here if we don't know price. We need to know it a long time in advance. They're looking for 2 and 3 years from now. So they're not looking for
Right.
summer, fall.
And price we can do, but what we can't do currently is actually take a list, to Carol's point, of military reunions and put someone at a desk and say, hey, make proactive calls on these 50 potential clients. You're not going to turn them all, but you're at least going to start building a relationship. The hotels are very familiar with the practice of familiarization tours. We would bring in a group of people that have these kind of events that they're looking for, which, as we know, is off-season midweek, and have 10 or 12 of them. They said they'd host them at the hotels and kind of show them what Rehoboth has to offer. And those are in the industry known as FAM trips, or familiarization trips. So overwhelmingly, I think it was a very positive meeting, Carol. The hotels felt good about having a vehicle of communication. We said this wasn't a one and done.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're going to get back with them, and it was positive. I mean, like I said, it started off kind of quiet, like, what is this all about?
It very much seemed when we first got in there that people were kind of concerned to say their opinion, but once it got started, I think it went really well. And at the end also, they stuck around, wanted to talk. It was a very, nobody just got up and left. It was a very positive experience for sure, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a challenge, but I think what we're learning is that there's kind of a ingrained culture around the use of this building, and which is something that can't be ignored. And so if we could be creative and flexible and nimble on our side as far as is trying to encourage the demand that will drive the change, rather than to make a decision on what the change should be and then bring, the events to it. And I think that, at least that, as long as I've been on this committee, that's what I've been hearing, that, that this is going to be a huge change in mindset. And so I think the demand, if we can try to facilitate that, would drive the change rather than having a strategic view that kind of facilitates the change. So, instead of if
Show me the money first.
well, it's kind of like instead of if you build it, they will come.
Right.
It's like, let's get them to come and then we'll build it.
Well, that's why I think we have so many great things already going on as it is. A lot of them can just be kind of moved around and fixed a little bit just to make it even better, and then it will
Yeah,
create
right.
a snowball effect of sorts.
And I think that would be a better path to success.
I think, well put, Steve, as always, really well put. Well, all of you.
Yeah, kind of
quite frankly.
sobering from my perspective, but well.
Not really. I actually think, and I always jump to solutions. You have such a good way of strategically communicating these complex ideas. But I guess that's why I'm so focused on having some sort of pro forma or cost benefit, because to me, I mean, numbers help drive the change. And when you can see that an investment in the convention center or increase in convention center bookings, result in more revenue, result in the ability to make other investments, result in, the hotels and everybody in town benefiting, to include our residents. I mean, we've had some really cool acts here, we want to keep bringing those acts in and that entertainment in. I know there's been at least one study that where people, and the latest What was it? What are we working on? The planning commission, the long-term plan for the city.
Oh,
CDP,
This-
comprehensive.
Yeah, the comprehensive development plan. I mean, people came back and said they really want more entertainment venues. At least that's one of the themes, maybe not major, but certainly a minor theme that people have come back and said, we want more entertainment venues. We want more opportunity to go to shows, et cetera. I don't know where I was going with that, but Dan has a comment, so. I think my point being, if we can show financially that if we make an investment, we'll have more opportunities for entertainment, for business, for residents, I think that's what's gonna drive the change, not so much from the ground up, so, sorry.
Copy of the agenda.
Yeah, here's one right here.
Just want to make a comment.
Yeah, sure, here, take that one. I just state your name, we have to have it on the name and organization, Dan, for the record.
Dan Slagle from Rehoboth Main Street. So I've been out and I've met with merchants, and I think some of the response, I'm sorry I didn't make that meeting. I had other meetings to attend, but it was one I really wanted to attend. Because being out in the world, visiting merchants in this area, they have a complaint about the hotels. Because the hotels, they're wanting to bring big groups in, but the hotels are not willing to work and give a discount rate for the group to come in. And they want to book these groups between September and May when it's really quiet in this area. You know, it's not as busy.
Who does, the businesses?
Yes, the businesses
Okay.
want to bring big groups in for their.
And they're saying the
whatever's going
hotels
on.
aren't rate
Right, they walked
flexible?
around and all that. This is this feedback that I'm getting.
Yeah.
I don't know this for a fact.
surprising.
The feedback that I'm getting is that they walked around to different hotels and no one was willing to work. One of the merchants did find a hotel got it down to $80, and that included breakfast. So that was nice. But these rooms might be sitting empty otherwise in January, February, March. The hotels didn't want to work with them. And that was maybe 8 hotels in the area. So I feel like some of the responsibility to get people to come here is maybe having some discount rates or a group rate, so we can have conventions. Just what I'm hearing out and
What
about.
kind of groups are they talking about?
I mean, it's different merchants that I visit wanted to bring groups in for like maybe stitching or different things, and they're not talking like 10 people, 30, 40, 50,
And
you
they're
know.
what kind of groups are they? What's the organization?
Again, it's just different merchants I'm visiting around the
Give an
area
example
here.
of a stitching needlework group.
Yeah, or there's been other merchants too, that might be use the convention center or just wanted some discount rates from the hotels. The reason I'm bringing this up is that the hotels need to work with us too. We need to work with them, but they need to work with us by giving us some good group rates or discounting rates for the off season. Just an idea. It's a suggestion.
Yeah, it sounds like just a communication issue
Yeah,
because
it
any hotel general manager, knows what his cost per occupied room is, and anything over that is profit. So I'd be shocked if the right person at a decision table wouldn't make the right rate decision.
I've
to
heard
get
it from about
something
4
off season.
merchants. So one I was like, okay, but it was about 4. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Yeah, maybe a little town hall between the merchants and the hotels so they get to know
That's
each
a
other.
great idea. Absolutely.
I'd love to add to that too, actually. I will send this report also, the one from Ocean City, to everybody as well to look at. But it talks a lot about that too, and there is definitely, it says there's a cap at what the rates are if they're too high, that people won't come. Essentially, it said that 22% of the decision factor for when to choose a destination has to do with the rate of a hotel too. So there's actually, there is a correlation between that as well.
Look
But
how
this-
far down it is in the factors.
it is far down. Yeah, it's not the highest for sure.
Yeah, it's in the middle.
Yeah.
So rate doesn't drive everything.
No, yeah, I think, and I believe for Ocean City, it was $120 some a night is what the
Break point.
rate point was, somewhere in the 128, I think, something like that.
What about out on the highway?
For rates,
Yeah.
I'm not sure with that. I guess that's the different situation is the hotel, the rates on the highway are going to be significantly different typically than the ones in town. I'm not sure. I assume that people would. I think one of the other things is how close it was to the actual hall.
Right.
So I think that people would obviously, want to be closer to the actual hall itself.
And in town.
Many of the Greyhound participants stayed in Dewey.
Because of the rates? Wow.
Well, and they allow the pets.
They what?
Pets. Oh, right, yeah.
All hotels allow
Right.
Oh, in Rehoboth?
involved in
Right.
But in Dewey, there's more that allow the pets, and you have less rooms.
They understand the opportunity, yeah.
Yeah.
And Ocean City, has thousands and thousands of things.
Yes.
We can't compete here with the rates that Ocean City.
Absolutely.
And that's an interesting point, because I love that we have this model that you found, and I think we can use it. But I actually think that Ocean City, this is just my hypothesis, that Ocean City's actually targeting a different group, has a different demographic than what we would like to target, right? I mean, so so I think it's good to learn from Ocean City, even to work with Ocean City, because we're targeting two different audiences to come into our town.
Yeah, they're not a competitor of sorts.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, they're targeting bigger,
Exactly.
but in the small size, I would think we'd be somewhat similar. I mean,
That's
Yeah.
well put. That's what I'm trying to say.
if they're looking at what we used to
Exactly.
call the Smurf market, which stands for sports, fraternal, religious, and military, that's called the Smurf hotel market.
Oh, I love it.
So size-wise, off-season, they're going to be going after the same targets as we are that fit us
Oh,
because
it
they
would
want to
be?
fill
During
their
our prime
building.
season, is what you're saying?
During their off-season, yeah.
Yeah.
Smurf business.
The one I found,
Because they can layer a couple or three of those groups in their building,
At the same time.
yeah,
Oh,
at the same
interesting.
time. So,
the one I found that I thought was best was Newburgh, North Carolina, right on the beach,
I mean, in terms of
Bigger-
a comp city,
or comp.
Newburgh,
Newburgh or
Newburn.
Newburn?
North Carolina. Well, now that you've given that piece to Kyle, he's going to be all over the internet finding finding their plan.
They have a great brochure.
Thank you for that.
Okay, good.
So in summary,
fascinating.
in summary, we feel like we've started a great relationship with the hotels. To Steve's point, I think what will really help drive this strategy is the data work that Kyle leading can do in terms of a pro forma or an ROI piece, and kind of start with that. But if we're successful, Steve and Lisa, and we get numerous site visits in a day, that model will outgrow our current staffing against that.
Right.
Pulling Steve away from the desk and having to meet with clients at their time schedule, not necessarily our time schedule.
Well, no disrespect, you need somebody with some experience.
Yeah, so first we have to show what
We
the,
heard that when
Yeah.
people supported, or at least the hotels were supporting Karen's role.
right.
So,
Oh, and then what we heard,
Definitely.
of course, is that the original plans for this building included a redo of the convention center, and that was
I heard that.
pushed aside. We did hear that from the hotel community too. I forgot to mention that.
All right. Well, thanks for all the great work and the data and everything. And so I'm going to move on to old business B, just update on hourly rates. And Steve, I'm going to take this off because actually this should be update on the booking guidelines in the future.
Right.
But you want to just mention where we are there? I think.
No,
it's a
I mean,
quick
there's been no
mention.
change. I
Yeah.
think with the feedback that I received from Carol and Emily and others from the chamber and from Stephen Perry, I think we have the right things captured. It's just building the guidelines around it so that there's clarity when we begin to advertise the hourly rate. We have an FAQ or something that's available to anticipate questions, answer them in advance so that all of those kind of unique cases and unique needs, depending on the desired use for that briefer period of time, are addressed.
Thanks, Steve. All right, so any new business anybody wants to bring to the table? Personally, I kind of like having one or two things that we're focusing on as a group rather than putting too much on the agenda, but I'm open to other suggestions.
Kyle and I
if
don't need
folks-
any new business.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a little tapped out.
But I kind of like two focus areas. Is that okay with everybody else? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so we'll keep it with those two items, which, and let me clarify, the two items at this point are the convention center, both long-term and short-term, and then instead of the hourly rates, we're really focusing on the booking guidelines. Okay, all right, cool. Any other committee member comments, anything else from the chamber, from Dan, or, okay? Okay, citizen comments? Oh,
Okay.
well, thank you for coming and listening. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and jump right down to action items. And the few action items I have is a meeting that I think you guys will take the lead on through Sharon to talk about some chair options. And then
Question, will
also,
that,
yeah.
will that request for a meeting on chairs be a surprise to her? Is she?
What I'm gonna do, that's a really good question, so, and I didn't say this out loud, just in my head, so it's probably best to say this out loud. I was gonna follow up with Sharon, just a quick email and copy all, everybody in the group here, and just say, hey, we had a meeting today, here's a few things folks will be following up with you on, so, I think that'll help and not come out of the blue. Good, thank you for bringing that up, Richard.
And I mean, I'm
oh,
happy to
sure.
participate in that meeting too, unless you want to.
No,
You're
go,
drafted.
please, go ahead, yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
we
great.
would love a commissioner on there.
Yeah, super. So I have an action, actually. My action is to send Sharon a recap of this meeting and heads up on a couple follow-ups that'll be happening with her. And so the chair meeting's one, and then setting up a meeting with probably Sharon and Bert, who's the financial director, and Kyle and whoever else wants to be involved with it to go over and start to form or put together a pro forma, cost benefit, ROI, whatever we're going to end up calling it, to include in the briefing, which is the final action item, a little bit longer term, is for you guys to prepare the briefing for January 17th for the commissioners to give an update where we are with strategy, and then a specific request on any investments that we think should occur as part of this budget season. All right. I think that's the main items that we have. Anything else from anybody here? Okay.
You're bringing it home right on time.
Exactly.
Madam
I'm
Chair.
trying. I know I have 30 seconds, so hurry up. Our next meeting date, I'll set up a meeting date in December. I know, again, it's kind of, as Carol was just saying, it's an incredibly busy time. So we'll try to target around this time frame. It seems that Wednesdays, Thursdays work good, so I'll send out some options to folks. And then, are there any other final comments from anybody? Okay, thanks for everybody's
Good meeting.
participation. and
I'm
work, and-
just thrilled to have Kyle and Richard
Wow,
on
it's
the
awesome.
team.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Their
Yeah.
insights and skills really contribute tremendously to what we can do here.
Yeah, I really
Thank you.
appreciate the work. I think it's
Well,
going to be a great.
I'll speak
thing
for
the
myself.
town.
I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's,
Great.
I'm loving diving in these numbers and stuff too, so it's great. And it's-
We're a great
fun.
team.
Yeah, I can
like
tell.
to talk and bigger.
and
Yeah.
with Peter's very unique insights into
know.
Oh my God.
so much of what we're discussing
Can't
is
buy that kind of
you
background
can't.
in
I mean,
history.
it's world-class stuff.
All right, cool. Well, if nothing else, then I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting at exactly 12 noon, according to my mobile phone. So meeting is adjourned. And I don't have my gavel, but just trust me, it's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Good meeting.
Thanks,
How fun.
Carol and Emily.
I love it. We really have a neat opportunity here. We really, really do with this asset. Well, I don't think we've looked at the convention center as a town asset. It's not on the same tier as the boardwalk and beach, of course, but I'd say it's in that next tier of really cool.
Meeting space.
Yeah, no, I think
It's a really neat
I've been getting
opportunity.
excited about, as a business
Yeah,
person, about,
right?
yeah, just like looking at how it could be utilized.
Yeah.
It's definitely could be utilized very well.
And even though we can kind of leverage experiences in similar-sized communities, I think, it has
We're
to be
still
customized
recording,
for
just
us.
for the
Absolutely,
record,
yeah,
so you
We are
guys know.
unique, yeah.
But yeah, we are.
And
yeah.
just based on the feedback that we get from citizens and local businesses, we have to be cautious about how we advertise this, because if we get the hotels from the coastal highway who dominate use of the convention center, it could actually be counterproductive to what we're trying to do.
Okay, I can see where,
We need to find ways to encourage.
And I
the
say
local-
organically, that's not gonna really happen.
Yeah.
Right,
Don't
right.
worry
Well,
about
again,
If you gave them too much, of it, yeah.
Their business plan does not include our convention center.
Right.
but if we could find ways to have it be a win-win-win, where the residents feel like they've won, the businesses and the hotels feel like they've won, and the city feels the same way, then that'll be the.
I know,
real
that's why
success.
I would love, we're not gonna rename it, but the community center speaks more to dealing with the local community than a convention center, which,
Well, the official word I'm seeing is convention hall.
Yeah.
Carol, you
That's kind of the
know,
hybrid of a convention center and community hall.
right,
Yeah.
that's what
Carol,
it says
you
on our
know,
committee.
and
yeah.
Main Street should know, the mayor says you are the marketing arm for the convention center.
The chamber has always been the main marketing arm for
So-
the resort area, and we can do that, but we need to know
Information.
what we're marketing.
Right, exactly, exactly. Right.
The information is the biggest gap, and,
Yeah.
and we put it all together, and I keep repeating this, but it went into a trifold. And that's our biggest error.
But I think what you guys are adding to this will help us get closer to what Peter's vision was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
Economic impact, you wanted my figures of the chamber on that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I just had some questions too about, yeah, well, so I have all that data. Yeah.
We may want to walk out just
Yeah, I was
because
gonna
it's
say,
still
But Carol,
recording
you should,
and,
Carol, also give him, you know, the Sussex County numbers
I actually
oh, yeah.
are
forgot
good
about that
too.
we were gonna schedule some
that's
time.
fine.
later after.
And it,
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
some ways,
Yeah, it's.
can be manipulated along with yours.
Thanks, Steve.
Database decisions,
Yeah, no, that's.
right?
Did you drive over?
I did,
Okay, me too.
because I dropped Ossie and said, I mean, I literally pulled in at 10.
Did you really? Did you get your money?
No.
Yeah, I would love to just take, you know.
Well, we got something that I feel really good about.
No, someone left it here the last time, and I
free
returned it
until
to Steve, and it wasn't
Yeah.
Steve's. Steve thought they were yours, so they were obviously here before our previous meeting.
You know, how you coach that, and I love that, I love the knock our socks off.
I have a fear of public speaking. I have serious anxiety over it. Yeah.
But you would never.
That's why I'm not, I don't, when I'm talking and there's a microphone in front of me, I get a little bored.
Yeah,
You have to get up and
No, I think there was.
Yeah, I used to actually build websites. I haven't done it in a little bit.
But it just shows.
I'm not as familiar as I used to be, but I still can get in there.
You know, they see 3 or 4 similar patterns walking together.
Oh, yeah,
I
absolutely,
think
yeah.
about that school.
Yeah, I definitely know a significant amount of people.
Thank you, guys. Good feedback.
No, so I felt the same as you. That's really more indicative of what occurs here than the small number of people.
You hear the negative before you hear the positive.
You know, I know from my military days, it takes one, you know, what, to knock out 10 atoms. Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, I'll come right over.
Please come over, I have at 3 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, it won't take that long. I just have a few questions, so yeah.
Yeah.
And he's gonna come without me, because I double booked.
What?
I know. But I still want to get on your lunch calendar schedule, we should do that too.
On the what?
On a lunch schedule calendar.
On
Have lunch with you.
Oh.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
casual.
I don't know how to. I never go to lunch.
Carol never gets
I
lunch.
take my lunch from 9 to 10,
Okay.
and then I'm there.
Full day grill.
Well, that's why we have to be careful with you are. Well, you know, again, it's how we package it, I think. But I don't know. But I've always been, I've always been a believer in what you were saying when I first joined this committee. That's the way to go. It's just how do we convince people that they can do the right thing? That, you know, everybody can win if we all open to it. That's the right. I know.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
But it's
So he's gonna come over, we have a 3 o'clock meeting, he's Or three, probably right to the file.
It makes you wonder why that went away. I don't have the history. Well, let's try to.
Somebody's backpack.
That's fine. It's not a bomb. Well, thank you all for making time for me.